Hi, this is Mark from Briar Nature Center. We're going to learn about eating some weeds today. First, I want to just thank all of you who support Briar, whether it's through participating in our programs, donors, and of course Abington Township. Before we talk about eating any kind of wild plants, there are some safety concerns. First of all, you need to know what you're eating. So you should never eat a wild plant without consulting experts. As one mushroom forager once told me, well, an expert is just someone who's not dead yet. So consider that before you go picking any kind of wild plant and popping it in your mouth. The other thing to consider is soil contamination. There could be bacteria and certainly heavy metals like lead, especially in urban areas. Finally, it's important to consider that collecting in most wild areas, natural areas, is against the law without permission. So make sure before you go collecting any kind of plant that you have permission. But of course, some of these plants you can find right in your yard or perhaps a neighbor's yard that you know. Another thing we have to worry about is protecting the environment. That's why today we're going to talk about eating non-native or invasive plants rather than picking native ones. Those native plants are highly beneficial to local wildlife, so we want to save their food for them. Whereas non-native plants feed many, many fewer local wild animals. And in many cases, by picking some, you would be improving the habitat. So we found some stinging nettle here. It very often grows right by the edge of waterways where it's wet or damp. And as its name says, this is a poisonous plant. It does sting. It has small needle-like hairs all over it, stems and leaves alike. And if you touch it, it causes a contact dermatitis, a stinging sensation. Locally, a lot of people know it as 7-minute itch, but I'd like to call it 45-minute to 3-hour itch. And it's more of a sting than an itch, at least for me. The funny thing about it, though, despite it being poisonous to touch, once you cook or dry this plant, it is really a super green. It has more protein than any other, green you're going to buy in the supermarket, whether it be spinach or kale or anything like that. This has more vitamins and more protein per weight than any of those greens. So it's extremely beneficial as a food plant. It is also an introduced weed. There is a native subspecies, but most of the ones you're going to find in your neighborhood are probably not the native one. So we're still right down by the stream here, and in the same habitat we found some Japanese knotweed, also known as Japanese bamboo. And if you look at the plant, you can see why it's called bamboo. You have these nodes where the leaves come off, and here's an old stem. So it does look a bit like bamboo. This is the only time of year, early spring, that you're going to want to eat this plant. As it grows taller, it gets very fibrous. But right now, you can pop it right off, and it's got this soft, juicy interior, and it has a sour apple taste, very similar to rhubarb. You could use it as rhubarb substitute in any recipes, and feel good about getting rid of invasive plants. The nice thing about this compared to rhubarb is rhubarb, if you don't cook it, is poisonous. The leaves are poisonous as well. The whole plant is edible and safe to eat even when it's raw. And it's really, really sour, but some people like that. So it's got a lemony, almost sour apple kind of taste to it. Mix this with honey and it goes really, really well in things like pancakes. So this is garlic mustard over here. It is an extremely invasive, noxious weed where we live, but it's also delicious and edible. You can see that there are flower buds just starting to emerge on this one. Those will turn into little white flowers. The entire plant is edible. The leaves have sort of a bitter, spicy green flavor. So if you like things like radicchio and other bitter greens, or even if you don't like them that much, they're a great addition to salads. They're really delicious in things like frittatas and omelets, lasagna, pastas, and also there's lots of recipes for pesto. So yeah, it's delicious. The leaves have that kind of oniony, garlicky, a little bit bitter taste, and then the roots. This is a nice big one here. You pull it out, you'll see a large white root. If you clean that off and peel it, you can chop it up, add some vinegar, and you've got horseradish. This little plant here is called bitter cress. There's two species, both non-native to our area. And invading, this one invades more woodland areas. It's narrow leaf bitter cress, and it's a really, mild green that you can add to salads. It's great raw, very healthy, and not bitter like its name. It's kind of a misnomer. Then the other one is hairy bitter cress. We'll see if we can try and find some. It's usually more likely to see in lawns and along roadsides. And it's a little bit more peppery than this one. This one's very, very mild. But yeah, invasive plant. Even right in Briar bush, we have to pull this every year. So most people know this plant, known locally as onion grass. This is also called wild garlic, and that's pretty much what it is. In the spring, you see these beautiful green chives, and they make a perfect replacement for chives in any kind of recipe. They also do have bulbs that you can pull up if the ground's nice and soft, but usually you have to dig them out, or that happens. The one thing I will say about this plant is I've been warned that plants in the onion and garlic family are really good at pulling heavy metals out of soil. So if you are going to be eating this plant from yards or your neighborhood, you probably want to make sure that soil has been tested for lead, especially. In cities and places like that, a lot of the soil has lead contamination. So just be careful with this one. If you live out in the suburbs or a rural area, it's probably fine. So you can dig up those bulbs underneath and use them as a replacement for garlic. They're a little bit milder, like spring garlic would be, but delicious. All right. So one more plant that's very common around neighborhoods here, especially in gardens where it may have been planted and taken over or come over from your neighbor's yard. It's got a couple of common names. Goutweed is one, or bishop's weed, and it is a member of the carrot family, and it tastes quite a bit like carrots or parsley, which is another member of the same family. Really good in a salad, really good as a cooked green. So if you like sort of a carroty, parsley type taste, you're going to love this plant. When cooked, it's a little bit more like a spinachy flavor, and very healthy. So eat your weeds and enjoy.
outdoors.